going to open up to questions, and so that we can have an orderly way of doing this. We have a mic set up in the middle, so that everyone in the room can hear the questions, and we can give you the answers to those questions. The other thing is that, you know, I understand that some individuals may have 20 questions. And we cannot allow one individual to have 20 questions. And so we would ask you to ask whatever that's burning question that you have, and we will provide an answer to it, if we have an answer available to it. And so one at a time, one question per person. And so if we have 5 questions, you're not going to be allowed to ask 5 questions. Everyone prioritizes then the one that you haven't heard the answer to, who will answer. Okay, what I would ask you to do, this is a residence community meeting. This meeting isn't for people that live in Fosher, it's not for people that live in Houston. And so if you're not a resident of Cinco II, we ask you not to come to the mic. Because what we understand and what we saw on social media, we saw people that live in Fosher, we saw people that live in Farnstorm. Listen up, please. Please. We saw people living outside the community making comments about the community. And I want you all to understand something. When you allow those kinds of comments to be made on social media about your community, it hurts your value. If people outside of here hear those kinds of things and believe those things to be true, but they're not fact-based, it hurts your value. So name, community you live in, and question. Thank you.
Shadimir, Cinco Ranch II. So my question is, today we heard a lot of talk about the future maintenance plans and what we can do in order to enhance or get the most out of the life of our brick-thin walls, if that's the right term. So my question is, why didn't we do that before? I heard, we have here a lot of presidents, CEOs and stuff of our MUD district as well as of our HOA. So why didn't that happen before, and who's responsible for this? Thank you.
So one thing I want to clear up, earlier I said I was from MUD 2, I'm Cinco 2, I apologize, I hate getting up in front of people, so bear with me. So over the time, the developer has placed the fences, the landscaping, and everything in place. So as the board has progressed, we've gone through and tried to maintain the aesthetics that are there and to keep up. I can't say that we have gotten everything we've missed. The board has changed over throughout the years. It was developer-based, now we're truly a homeowner-based board. And I have been on the board for a year, and I have been coming to the HOA meetings since 2015. This board and the people prior to me, that is the priority for them, is to take care of the community. So fencing, iron fencing was one of the first things that's come up. I, as a board member, have learned about the fencing and the maintenance of brick fencing this year. So that's the only thing I can say is that there is an education process for your current board members and the people out there.
But then my question was not directed to you. My question was, who's responsible?
Well, okay, so who's responsible for the maintenance currently?
No, my question is, who was responsible for...
Well, I can't hear this gentleman, so let me... The building of the fence? The building?
And the maintenance. Less than 9 years on the fence.
I apologize.
Sorry, I thought my question was clearer than that. So my question is, who was responsible since these fences were put together up until today to put together a proper maintenance plan to make sure that they're built up to spec so that we can get 25 to 30 years out of them?
So the original fences were built by the developer and they were handed over to the HOA. And so truly the HOA Original HOA was responsible for putting together a plan, to answer your question. Which at the time, the original was a developer. I can't throw it all on the developer over time. It goes through, it passed through, but the original setup was a developer, yes.
Next question. Next question.
Next question.
Sorry, JB Cinco 2. So, I just had a question on the next process for how we make a decision where we're going. I mean, this is a significant investment, regardless of whether the original quote is accurate or not, which I don't say I doubt, but there's been definitely no due diligence in terms of multiple quotes. And what's the next process? This must go to a resident vote, I would assume, how we want to proceed. So what's the next step?
Okay, so to answer your question, there is no bids been taken. This is just an estimate to see where we would stand and where we would be. So if there was a process, either on the MUD side, which he explained, there's a process, they have to put it out for bid. Same way we do the HOA was we do with all of our repairs. We obtain bids, we would present them, and we discuss those at the meeting. To answer your question, yes, it is a community vote.
Okay, I'm Girish Dharmanjan. I live in Rollingwood section. So my question is like, since we are living here for last 5 years now, and we are seeing all these like the fences are getting deteriorated. So I think I'm an engineer. I know the steel structures and the brick structures. They can last at least decades, not like few years. So I think we need to do a proper investigation why this is happening. And like as you said, like the developers have given us this means they're responsible for it. So we have to. I'm pretty sure there is an investigation that we have to put in place, and we have to bring in all the developers together and just understand. I mean, the way they designed it, the life is not as expected. I'm pretty sure everybody's disappointed here that we're spending $27 million to fix all of this. It's huge money, and it's going to add thousands of dollars in everybody's like yearly the HOA maintenance and MUD and tax. And we are paying, by the way, tax $10,000, almost like every resident pays $10,000 tax, and they pay HOA and there are many things that we pay. So I think already there should be a fund which should be maintaining the fences. We didn't get that information from this presentation. We would like to know that. What is the current the fund available to maintain all of the fences before we go into this fixing things? So I think we have to really
Ask your question. Let me answer that question.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next question. So I wanted to address them without yelling at the mic. So
You're not
I apologize.
Yeah.
So there is a percentage of your dues that goes towards the maintenance and repair. And that's the way it's set up currently. There's no replacement fund. So if I remember right, currently there's $275,000 roughly for the fence repair. Now, there's a whole breakdown of the budget that you can see where things are allotted to things, such as fence repair, pool repair, tennis court repair. All those have broken down and so about $275,000 as of this year at the moment, that's a rough number, is attributed to repair and maintenance of fences.
So can we put in place one committee, like maybe residents can be involved to do the investigation and see like who is kind of liable for all of the deterioration? Like,
There's several things going on. We want to get everyone through, so we're going to address one question. So I'm not trying to pick on purpose. I'm trying to address everyone.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is get part of the investigation has been the engineers that have gone out and looked at that. That has helped us greatly and helped us. So what we want to do is then with the budget we can create. We can look at creating that. We have a budget committee that we have created to help us address these type of items. And that's what we're trying to do
So
currently.
can we put in place that's one data point, right? One engineer, one firm, that they have the findings. So can we put in place?
Okay, when we started this process, we said one question per person. And so we appreciate that you trying to might go to the person.
Because I'm not getting my answer.
If you have additional questions, please come over to the table and give it to the salary representative. If you have,
If you have the same, if you have the same question, please get in line. We can go through the people. We're trying to get everyone to people.
Okay, listen up. We're either gonna do this in an orderly fashion, or we're gonna do this in an orderly fashion. That's the only two choices we have. We have two choices, to do it in an orderly fashion, or to do it in an orderly fashion. So if we're gonna do it in an orderly fashion, we ask one question, we have additional questions. Someone else may have the same question. And you may get the answer. If you don't get the answer by the end of the night, give the answer, give the question to CIA, and we'll get an answer.
So my question, the first question is, can we put in place one more investigation before we go to this project?
Can we do what?
Can we put in place one more investigation, which will be, all the members, like, can we participate? And then we can have one more independent assessment, whether we do need that much money to fix all the fences.
We're gonna do all the due diligence necessary to ensure that we minimize the cost to the residents. Okay? Next question to the gentleman behind me.
Okay, so.
Next question to the gentleman
So where
behind me.
can I have more questions, so where can I?
Next question to the
No,
gentleman behind me.
I'm not asking any questions, I have more questions where I need to register those. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Armistead. I'm in Cinco Southwest 2. I've been in construction and real estate for 35 years. I have built miles of this same type of thing. My question to you, Mr. Engineer, did you test the mortar? Did you test the strength of the mortar? Second part is, okay, that's good to know. And how much can we put this back on the developer? Because the developer... The walls I built over 30 years ago are still standing. They're not broken because the proper slump of cement sand was made. Okay, that's number one. Number two, how much can we put back on him because he is still in business today?
Everybody has the same question. Because it's less than 10 years old. Perfect question. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to, as I said earlier in the process, we are addressing the developer to understand exactly what liabilities do they have. We don't know the answer. In the meantime, for that process, that process takes 5 years. We all understand the legal process. That process takes 5 years, 10 years. In the meantime, the fences are still crumbling. In the meantime,
It's not like 5-10 years. Who gave that 5 years?
I am not going to shout over someone that's not in the line. We actually have a question, get in the line and ask a question. It's a simple process. It doesn't have to be complicated. We can sit here tonight and have a conversation, and you can get the answers that you want. You can get the answers that you deserve. But we have a simple process of doing that. And the only thing I ask of each of you is to observe that process. It's not hard. This isn't Washington, D.C. This is our home. This is our residence. This is our community. And so if you want to fix it, just be civil, get in line, ask your question, and we can move on.
Answer this question. Can you answer my first question on the testing of the mortar?
No, we did not do any destructive testing of any of the existing fencing. the thing I'll point out is that there were at least 20 different designs, and it was obvious that there were multiple different contractors who built your fencing. That's normal in a development of this size. You had some, I would say, inferior construction out there, and then other areas looked great. So plus with the sheer length of fencing, MUD didn't really want us to spend weeks and weeks and weeks, evaluating every single panel. We walked it all and did our assessment. So no destructive testing was done, but it's pretty obvious that some of the sections had inferior, and they should not be failing this early.
So it's pretty cut and dry, who's responsible? Okay. It's pretty cut and dry why it's failing. It was not built correctly.
Sorry, the engineer can answer questions about the structure. That's kind of a...
I don't know who any of the contractors were. I don't know who designed any of the fencing or how well it was built.
Someone paid the contractors, correct?
Okay. I don't know anything about the original construction other than its condition now.
Thank you.
It seems to me like the structure itself, the premature failure is caused by a bunch of reasons that are going around the structure, right? So there seems to be either an initial design problem or a spec problem or a problem with the contractors who build all these things that cause this premature failure. So were any of the parties, including the developer, a part of the walkthrough process that you did to identify, who's responsible for what over there?
The question is what?
The question is, was the developer or any of the contractors who built all these structures and the landscaping, were they part of this walkthrough that you did? Were they involved in this process?
No.
Why not?
Because here's one of the issues. One of the first times that we had failed, we went back to find the contractor that built that fence. It was 3 years after how long? 4 years, 5 years after the fence was built. The contractor was no longer in business. The developer built all of the fencing. The developer turns the fencing over to the HOA. When the developer turns the fencing over to the HOA, aesthetically, it appears the fences look great. It's only after the years that we begin to see the deterioration.
So, I bought a house. I got some warranty on the house. Now, what kind of warranty did the developer give to the HOA or the community?
That's a 1-year warranty.
1 year warranty?
Wait.
So each individual contractor that constructed sections of fences would have given a warranty to the developer.
Right.
When the fencing is conveyed to the HOA, there's no warranty between the developer and the HOA. It becomes the HOA, and the HOA's full responsibility.
How did the developer build something which is $10 million or $27 million with 1 year warranty?
Okay, that was your question. If you have additional questions.
Mr. President, all the homeowners here, they want to hear answers. I don't think anybody is getting answers here.
Hold on. Hold on.
We are okay for him to ask a second question. Nobody is objecting, saying that please get over. So please answer the gentleman's question. We all have the same questions.
What is the question?
My question is, can we repeat the walk again with the developer present?
So you're asking if we could walk with the developers? So yes, we can make a request to the developer to come walk the sites with us, yes. That, we've already reached out and contact with them, that can be one of our questions, is to come out and walk the site with us.
So you're agreeing that all the solutions that are presented here can be put off until the process is completed?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
So we will not take any action until the walking.
No
I'm gonna
action.
stop taking action until we get the developer involved.
Just to be clear, the only action is just we're telling you about it, there's nothing being voted upon, the homeowners have a decision on which way to proceed. So no action from what's being presented would be taken without the homeowners.
Why are we even talking about it if the developer could easily fix it?
We can approach the developer. That is something we will do.
Okay? There is no point in anybody talking now because the developer has to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before you answer the question, ask your question, the gentleman over on the wall, we appreciate your involvement, we appreciate your input, but we would ask you again, if you have a question, be part of the
I
process.
really appreciate that you are answering the question very peacefully, and you are the one person have to answer everybody. But we cannot all stand in the line. This is how long we have. We cannot accommodate everybody in the line.
Okay.
Then get one. Get one. Somebody is asking the question. We want to know. Get one. Okay.
Okay, again, like my mom used to tell me, don't make me get off the seat. So, your question.
My name is Lee. I live in Cinco Ranch II. First of all, my English not so well, so please everyone to bear with me. And my question is, why the new replaced fence will be better than now? Because I saw our community is safe and never be fraud and no criminal, and it's beauty and it's new. So why have to be replace that? Why have to? Because from the beginning you said you all have to be paid, and all this project have to be present. Why have to be? Because you don't have our commission. We hire you, HOA, to service with us, for us. So you are not our boss.
So what do we make change?
So everyone has their right to ask a question. You have no right to stop anybody to say anything, to question you. The reason you're afraid because you're not right.
So let me say this. I don't believe that we'll stop anyone from asking a question. We put in a process that says that we ask each individual to ask one question and allow the next person to ask a question. We haven't stopped anyone from asking a question. What we have asked is that if you're not in the line asking a question, don't be yelling out in respect to the people that are asking the questions and the people that are answering the questions. Next, you said you pay us. Everyone up here on the HOA board are volunteers.
Yeah?
We're volunteers. We don't get paid. We do not get paid. We volunteer our time. On average, the individuals on the HOA board, along with a group of individuals we have that's called the Budget Advisory Committee, on average, probably spend somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a month trying to manage this association and this community in the best interest of the people that live here. We're not asking, and I understand you may not understand that, but I just want you to know, we live here also. We live here also. Everyone on the board lives and owns a house in Cinco. We have to pay the same fees, the same taxes that you have to pay. We do not want a $25, $27 million fencing project. But what we do understand is that we have issues with our fence, and we have to find solutions, and that in the end, regardless of the MUD or the HOA, the residents pays.
So we basically are not talking about MUD or HOA.
What we want to say is from the beginning, that gentleman with a large smile on the face, they said, we are happy to service with you. But we don't want their service because we think our community is great enough and we think we are safe. Right? And can you tell me if all the office staff is warranty, so where is our HOA fee we pay each year? So what did they do?
What is the HOA?
Seems like your HOA already
Okay,
waived the contract.
we got the question. I would allow Laura to tell you the breakdown of how the HOA are used.
The largest portion of your assessment each year goes towards landscaping of the community. It's about 75% of your assessment is for landscaping. It's a huge development, and it costs a lot of money to maintain it the way that you are wanting to maintain it. Let me answer one question at a time. Secondly, we have utilities that are very expensive. Water is a very big expense for the association for that landscaping, and you have your facilities is another large area. And one of the areas that the board of late, last few years has been focusing on is building reserves. So that's another large portion of your assessment.
You know, you cannot ask all the things what you want. What she always says, oh, we think that's all. We think we want to.
I don't know if you
don't want to. We think that's not.
So I think we need to move on to the next person.
Next person.
Thank you. My English is not good, so I may still not work correctly. But I have two questions. First, I'm very appreciative for just a minute for your organization about this meeting, and I'm also appreciative for your information that MUD is basically the volunteer of the whole progress. So HOA initialized the progress, but HOA basically do things year by year, right? The budget is year by year. So I'm not doubt about the ability of HOA. I'm just a little bit concerned about the ability of handling such a big, huge project with 27 million. So I would suggest to set up a special committee to get things done if we agree to do so. And one of the reasons is, what if TBG failed like 5 years later? What if TBG come? What if another contractor come? We have no future, like we have no warranty, right? And this is one suggestion. I would suggest to set up a special committee. Another question is, I'm very appreciative for seeing helmets and new helpers about the effort about the predation, but I'm a little bit doubt about the ability of TBG to do the inspection, since there's no third party, no bed, basically, and there's interest conflict. That's the most important thing, interest conflict. So I would suggest to re-estimate about the whole process. We may pay like estimation fee for third parties, but the 27 million is kind of not transparent to us. You heard that?
Okay, hold on one second. So I think the overall thing is that we will be putting together a committee. If the HOA takes on the project, if the homeowners decide that that's what they want done, we will be putting together a committee to help out with the process. I don't think anyone here on the board can say they have 100% knowledge and can manage a project this size. So I think that's the biggest step, is to understand. The homeowners have a decision, and we'll be making the decision, and based on either way, the committee can be created, and will be created. That is our intention.
Thank you. And then another question, for the second one, about the result. So I need a transparency. I need all the report about the 4 priorities to be shared exactly. Like it's TBG alone.
Again, this was just the first round. If the committee decides they want to go out and hire another contractor to go and walk it to verify what's there and verify the report that was there, that committee can do that. That's something, there's a process that we're going. Nothing has been decided. This is just a process to get the homeowner feedback, and we're definitely getting that. So thank you.
It's 9 o'clock, you know. We need a web forum for this.
TBG is the contractor for the MUD. The HOA, if we take on the project ourselves, we can choose any contractor that we choose. But what we cannot do is dictate to the MUD how to run their business. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the chances with us.
Just create a web forum where everybody can post a question and get the answer,
Since
rather
much
than
more
just
important than the replacement of the new fence. So my question is, what measures have the HOA adopted for the daily maintenance and repairs? In this case, the fences are designed for about 20 or 30 years. Otherwise, we cannot make sure this new replacement will be damaged or replaced in another several years. So what measures has the HOA had? Thank you.
So the association has already begun the process of removing the ivies from some brick fencing. That is ongoing. And as Chester indicated earlier tonight, we have scheduled for the fall, winter, so very soon to pull the dirt that has built up under the fences and make sure that we do cutbacks on all of the landscaping that touches the fencing.
I mean, those fences are only about less than 10 years. So
they're not all less than 10 years. The association was incorporated in 2006.
Yeah.
That's more than 10 years.
What is the process?
Hi, this is Eugene from Cinco Ranch II. I have 2 quick questions. The first is technical. In my impression, there are 2 different kinds of fences. One is steel, and the other is the same brick wall. What's the breakdown between the budgets among these two types of fences? This is that, right?
Yeah, so the prices that we've been using for this assessment are coming from actual bids that we see coming in, and it's a complete average.
Yeah, I just want to know the rough numbers.
How much a break?
Yeah, how much breakdown?
A brick fence is $130 a linear foot. That's what we're using for this assessment. Wood fencing is $45 a linear foot. Aluminum fencing is $60 a linear foot. And each column is $2,000.
So what's the major part? Is it steel fencing or the thing?
What is the aggregate?
Which one is most?
So you have on your chart here.
Yeah.
There's
It's a simple sentence. You can say this. Which part contributes the most for the budget?
Most of the budget is the brick thin wall.
Brick thin wall. How much percent?
I mean, it's close to half, 40, 45%.
Right, so the question is what's the breakdown of the $27 million?
Yeah, I think you better give us
So, of that total, and brick is the largest, $8.3 million. Okay? And then concrete panels, there's 7.8. The brick metal combo, where we have the metal incorporated as part of the fence, is 1.8 million. Just the metal fence by itself is 2.1, and wood is 1.6. On top of that, the contract or the engineering firm had a 20% contingency, an extra $27 million. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, but we better get the tables with details because I think we have the right to know the details.
Well, one thing that John mentioned, we're going to be setting up a fencing advisory committee. We feel that we need to have some resident experts to help look at this. We don't know all the answers, as Chester mentioned. If you're interested in participating, please let Laura know your name, your phone number, and your background. And
we have all that documentation, the spreadsheet that he's reading off of, and the big packet that goes section by section, and also lists off, section by section cost estimates for each one. We'll provide that to the HOA, and will be placed on the HOA website. Okay?
Okay, and another question is about, do we have a plan for warranty and independent inspection?
Generally, you only get about a 1-year warranty if you can talk to the contractors and negotiate as part of your contract. Generally, you're only getting a 1-year warranty, but it's part of the contract that you set up with the contractor when they build it.
Can we negotiate the number?
You can potentially negotiate a little bit longer warranty, but it's not going to be 20 years. That doesn't exist.
Okay, so what's the number?
I don't set up contracts with contractors, I just design them. Okay, he's only seen 2 years as the max.
So how about the inspector?
Okay, I appreciate you. You have other questions, please come to the table.
Okay, so my name is Ian. I'm a Cedar Grove resident. Just add on comments on the gentleman's questions. So if I understand right, the database will be shared with us, right? And will we have the breakdowns on like the miles of each priority 1 to 4, and the miles of like the wall types, the steel walls or brick walls? And if we have that kind of specific numbers, we can do our own kind of benchmarking. Gentleman in the back does a quick math. So we are talking about $27 million over 35 miles. We spend about $482 per meter wall. No matter it's priority 1 or priority 4, no matter it's brick wall or steep wall. So we would like to have more details from the database. If that could be shared, that would be great. And throughout the presentation, we see some conflicting numbers. Slide number 25, the slide shows like $730, but on the slide here it's $600. So when we residents receive the bill, could it be different, like even higher? And in August, we saw like 27 million will be divided by 5,200 homes. But 2 months later, it jumped up to like 6,300 homes. So we want to be sure about the exact numbers. How many homes do we have?
So all of that data is going to be provided to you. It'll all be up on the Cinco website, so you can get that from your HOA website. The reason why it said 730 versus the 600 is your HOA is larger than your MUD. Your HOA includes Cinco Southwest and Cinco Northwest. When we did the original presentation, we did an apples-to-apples comparison of what it would cost residents of the MUD and then to pay for it through the MUD or through the HOA. The 5,208 residents are only the residents of the HOA that live inside the MUD. The ones who live in Cinco Northwest live in a different MUD. Their fences wouldn't be replaced by Cinco Southwest MUD 1. That's why we did it in the original presentation as an apples-to-apples comparison. With this presentation, the one that you have in your hand, we included all of Cinco 2. So that includes Cinco Northwest paying for a portion of the fences in Cinco Southwest, because it's all a single HOA with a single assessment. So we thought that would be a more accurate number. So that is why there is that difference that you see. There's about 6,000 homes between Cinco Northwest and Cinco Southwest, which will give you about a $600 annual assessment increase to do the project over 3 years. If you only used the residents of the MUD, it would be a little bit higher.
Okay, thanks. Look forward to the details.
And again, I beg you, you have expertise in this business. Talk to say, we're going to put together a residential board, a residential advisory committee. Myself, I envision 30 to 50 individuals. We want all the input that we can get, and so anyone in the room that has some intimate knowledge, understanding, expertise in helping us do this project and helping us direct our decisions, I would ask you to participate.
Yes, I think the residents would love to help, right, to do their own assessment. I think some already did.
And volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, no worries. We'll put down all names there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing some information. I think I have two questions, one for the general audience here and one for you guys. I think my first question is for the audience here. So, for those of you who have confidence that you spend the 11, 20 million will benefit my family, my neighbors, the Cinco Southwest community, please raise your hand. Do you have confidence?
You have a question
You know, this is a big spending, 11, 27 million, right?
If we have a question, we'll get one.
Yeah.
So
So,
ask your question.
yeah, I asked my question.
Okay.
My question is I have two questions. One is for the general audience, one is for this gentleman sitting here. So for the audience, please, if you have high confidence that this 27 million dollar spending will benefit you, benefit your neighbors, benefit the community, please raise your hands. Okay, that's fine. So for those of you who don't have confidence, like myself, please raise your hands.
Okay, what's the next question?
I think the answer here is pretty clear. You know, I come here, you know, with a few other my neighbors. You know, kind of said, hey,
So listen up.
yeah. So I think that, you know, I get a feeling that a lot of people here don't have a lot of confidence that this $27 million spending will benefit us.
Okay, thank you.
And then my next question is, you know, I guess this is a pretty big spending. So, I mean, in terms of like a big spendings in my personal life, I like to look back, let's say, maybe a couple of years, see where the money come from, where my money go, and how am I spending money. I guess my second question for you guys is, would you guys willing to move through like maybe external auditing processes, make our where our spendings go, where our major products are, where our incomes come from. So everybody here have confidence that this $27 million spending will truly benefit us. Are we willing to go through the external auditing processes?
Okay, thank you. We will make all of the data that we have available to all residents. At that time, when you have all of the data, you guys are gonna choose. You guys are gonna be the one that comes back to the board, come back to the board and say, it's okay for my fence to be falling down, and it's okay for my house values to be whatever my house values are. We're not making that decision for you.
Well, I'm not talking about general information. I'm talking really about like let's say even back to my own, big spendings. I like to understand that, where my money come from, where I'm spending my money, where's my bigger projects, right? Whereas my question is for financial information. Will you guys going through external auditing and then let public know, how our budget is spending, which project we're spending of our money?
You can find all of the association's financial reports on mycincoranch.com. They're posted every month. So anytime you have any questions on that, that's available for you to look at.
Appreciate it, thank you.
So yeah, today I've been presented two options. So one is HOA taking over and one MUD. And could there be another option where, like I've seen the presentation saying about the MUD and what HOA does and what MUD, but could there be a third option where you can just start communicating with the developers, the previous developers, and can you do some detailed investigation on that and put forth a presentation to us, like what kind of effort you have put to communicate with them maybe a letter? I know it's every time you're asking the question, you're just using the word called legal system. I know that's really tedious, but what kind of effort we've been putting, like this has been started in 2015, I guess, we noticed something was wrong with the fences. Since that time, have you done anything, did you do any communication with the developers to let them know? And and also that's my first question. And the second question is, will there be more meetings? And is there a possibility to see few faces from the developers to come here and they can answer our questions?
So when it comes to developer, yes. As we said, we're reaching out and trying to coordinate everything with the developer. We will get them out to the walk fences with us. We can't make them show up to something, so we will do everything we can to get them with the homeowners meetings. Once we set those up, with the with the homeowners and volunteers who are willing to step up with us, we are willing to reach out to them and get them involved in the process as well, which we're currently doing. And yes, that first question that I have.
I was just asking, like, what kind of communication, what kind of effort we have put in to communicate with the developers starting from 2015 when we noticed the issue with the fences.
I don't know when we reached out. I know we recently reached out to developers. I can't.
But I think my common sense is that should be my first way to start looking into the situation, right? Like, who has built this and why it is.
So as I said, we're going to reach out. I can't go back and change what hasn't happened. I can just go with what moving forward. The other thing is, to answer your question, will there be more meetings? Yes. You asked about if there are going to be more meetings. We will have more meetings with community involvement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one being that, can you guarantee and assure all residents that there is zero conflict of interest in all parties involved regarding this fencing project?
Each we have to ask everyone that. I'm willing to pass around. I have no. Okay. So, is there a conflict of interest? Nothing's been done with the exception of a proposal. So
no. All dealings in the future, starting now regarding all these, to the completion.
That's my intention. I was signing an ethical piece of paper, I think, that we have, that we're willing to sign. I can't answer for the MUDs and their process.
So that's my next question. So this question is to the ABHR attorney. So if MUD were to take over this fencing project from HOA, what is the attorney fee for this bond that they are getting out of it?
Yeah, so we will, if this goes forward, we will sell bonds over a
period of time in tranches as they go on. That is a very long process. We have to do applications to the TCEQ and then sell those bonds. Yes, there will be substantial fees for a bond issue of this
How much
much.
is maybe?
I don't have, it'll be several $100,000 before you do all of the bond issues.
Okay, so let me ask you then, if HOA were to take over this project, what do they get out of this? Nothing, because they're volunteers, right?
Yeah, I can't answer you what the HOA gets out of it, but what I can answer is that there are differences in the impact on the residents between the long-term financings and the short-term financings. You cannot do those long-term financings without the sale of bonds. And so what the district has said is, if the HOA wants us to go through the bond issuance process and spread this out over 25 years, instead of you paying it over a very short time period, we are willing to do that. That is not free. There are costs and very extensive processes to do that. And we are happy to do that if you believe that it's of benefit to spread these costs over a 25-year period. If that is not your preference, then you can continue to keep the fences and pay for them over a shorter period of time without bonds sold.
What I don't understand is that over the years I noticed that some of the car accident that they knock off some the brick fences in some neighborhood. So, but they don't tear down the whole fences and rebuild everything. They just repair that section. Even though yes, I guess the color and all these things is not going to match, but over time with weather and it will blend in. And I think we all residents will be okay with that without spending all these 27 millions for the 35 miles of fences.
Thank you. Next person at the mic, thank you.
Hi, I have two questions. Number one is, we have Cinco Southwest one also. Do you have any such type of problems? Cinco Southwest 2 is a bit different recently, 10 to 12 years back. So that means when the developers, when they built it, these walls, fences and everything, there is someone is a compromised quality. So when HOA is handovering there, so HOA know that the quality of the fences and everything, right? So someone in HOA or whoever built it quality, someone compromised there, and there is a conflict of interest. President is HOA president, and you are the MUD 1 also is a vice president. So how we know there is a conflict of interest, and the initial phase itself, the developers hand over to the HOA, there is a quality compromise, someone who took this money, whoever initially built it, the money developers built it, they did not build a quality way. Who did this inspection and everything? So we need to know a legal, who is responsible for this.
So, if I got your question correctly, the process for the turnover from the developer to the HOA, the time these assets were turned over, again, the HOA board was majority developer. I am not accusing the developer of anything. The process is that the developer builds the fence, and the developer finishes the fence. If I'm correct, CIA services and the developer walks and look at it, and then accept that on behalf of the HOA. Your car that you just bought, when you bought your car, you walked around and you kicked the tires. If you're not a mechanic, if you're not a manufacturer of cars, the car runs good, the car sounds good, the car looks good. You pay your money, you take the keys. It's the same process. If 1 month, 6 months, 1 year later, the car runs into some issues, when you got the car looked good.
But the same car bought Cinco 1 also.
Because what?
The Cinco 1 also bought the same car. How come they don't have a problem, why we have the problem? Same manufacturer.
I could not answer for Cinco One.
That is what my question. Someone is compromised.
So, you know, I appreciate your concern. I appreciate your concern. I can say this for me, is that my belief is that no one on the HOA board is compromised. And so unless
That
you...
means CAA services compromise?
Hold on, you asked your question and I'm trying to answer to the best of my ability. So when you stand there and say that someone on the HOA board is compromised, give me the data that leads you to that conclusion.
So you said HOA did not compromise, then CAA services compromise?
I can answer, as to the MUD, the service on both the HOA board and the MUD board is not a legal conflict of interest. And so there are many people in the state of Texas who serve on both boards. And it's usually because we don't have a lot of people who are willing to spend their time on a volunteer basis to work. And so we've got, usually when we find people who are willing to volunteer time, they're willing to serve on both MUD board and on the HOA boards. And so, but it is not a legal conflict of interest for them to serve on the MUD board while they are also an HOA board member.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me bring one thing up. Thank you to all the gentlemen sitting up here and answering all the questions to everybody here. I know it's not easy to answer 100 people coming and asking questions. So thanks for all the time and also the efforts we put forward to this. Now that's a good thing. The next thing I want to say is there are a few people here trying to ridicule everybody trying to come and ask a question here. Please hold your comments. Everybody standing here and asking a question is talking on your behalf too, irrelevant of the way that they are doing it. So please don't nod your heads in an equally manner. Totally unacceptable. No.
Come on. Next.
We got to deal with it because, as you said, we need to be a civil society. Everybody has the right to talk and to do it.
Okay, listen up. Come on, please. Don't allow the woman to get you.
Okay, fine. Very simple question. I've had the experience of negotiating a lot of contracts before. I have never, in the last 25 years, I've worked on negotiating contracts, ever seen any company come out and say, we are doing this project for 27 million, given out a number ahead of time before anybody else could come and give you a number. What we have done, a mistake there fundamentally is, we have given a baseline of a number and restricted ourselves of being in a position to negotiate of anybody coming up with a number to us. So what we absolutely did wrong there, I mean, that's the whole problem that we are worried about here, because now anybody who walks into the bid here is going to start off with 27 million and move upwards. So we did a fundamental flaw there, and I don't know how we're going to fix that.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, if we were selling an individual commodity, that may be very true. But that's not what we're doing. We will put together, if the MUD were to do it, I assume the HOA will follow similar. We will have a set of approved plans and specifications that will be put out for public bid. There will be an advertisement for that bid. The contractors who participate in this area will be notified of the opportunity to bid, and then they will have to submit a sealed competitive bid. If you want the work, you bid as the best bid. This is not a negotiated, we don't have the legal authority as the district to do a negotiated contract. We can't value engineer, we can't reduce the cost by negotiations. We can only competitively bid on a set of plans and specifications. There are lots of contractors out there who want this work. This is a commodity, meaning there are lots of bidders and lots of folks that are willing to bid, and they want the work to keep their people bid. the fact that and every single public contract that is done, there is an engineer's estimate that is done in advance of the bidding process that is based upon industry standards that are out there. Basically, we are opening bids quite often for these types of fences. And so there's a fairly narrow range in which these all bid. And then each contractor has to submit a sealed competitive bid that are all open at the same time to determine who is the lowest bidder. And that's who gets the work, assuming that they are qualified. We do get to review their qualifications, meaning they have the history of doing these type of projects, and they also provide the type of bonds that are required to do these projects, which ensure that they complete the project for the price, and they have to provide an insurance bond of guaranteeing that. So these are not negotiated agreements, and what is out there in the market has nothing to do. Every single one of them is competitively bid.
So in your opinion, is $27 million the ballpark?
That's better answered by the engineers who see those projects. And
You just said you're managed several of these projects.
Yeah. But I'm the attorney. Let's give it to somebody who knows what they're saying about actual cost.
I think that didn't actually. This question is right. Basically, you said that you have done so much of this before that you know that an engineering estimate has to be given. And is there anybody that can prove the fact that you? Because I have never heard that before. Personally, that you give an estimate before taking it, because there you set a baseline, which is the wrong thing.
No, that is actually not what happens. These are competitively bid projects.
No. Bid is different. I'm talking about the estimate that has already been sent. The word has been sent out that you're already saying that project cost 27 million. Why would you say that outside?
First, the 27 million is over more than 10 years, over multiple bids. We have not decided how that project will be divided up. So where that is allocated between all of those and what cost of appreciation or depreciation, depending on what's going on in the economy, all will impact that ultimate price. But it will be competitively bid with multiple contractors submitting sealed.
My question was very simple. Can you help us understand or prove to me or send this all people around here saying that there is a requirement for an engineering estimate before a bid is sent out, because we already revealed the price that we are willing to spend there, which is wrong. You don't walk into a car dealer or to a house owner and say, I'm willing to spend 500,000 at the start before knowing the price of that, because it's the wrong thing, because you already told them that how much you are capable of spending, which is not right.
Okay. Thank you.
There will not be a $27 million.
Would you mind going back to the slide where it shows the fences with the shrubs and all this kind of stuff, the trees and all this stuff? One more. Okay, we can stop here. I can go back. I don't mind.
Right here?
All right, so this one and the next one, right? My question is very simple. When I don't mow my lawn, if it's bad, I get 100 notices, right? When you all see this one, sometimes it's damaged by the lawnmower that's tried by HOA. I don't know who it is, with the CIA service or not. How come we missed all these things so many years? How did we not see this one? And whose fault is it? I will tell you this. I know one of my neighbor's wall was damaged by the lawnmower that was done by the CA, like whoever was doing the common areas. Who's responsible for this? Why are we giving contracts to people who are damaging our properties like this? And why do I need to spend this hour standing here and creating all these things and spending over 27 million or whatever the number is?
So, I'm trying to dissect your questions.
You asked me one question, right? I'll ask the same question again if you want. I can
Okay, so I'm trying to dissect, break them down into pieces. So when you refer to these pictures, you're referring to these pictures and what is that?
I think somebody mentioned that this was done something like, can you go back to the slide next to this one?
The last one, number 4, how did that happen?
Okay? So I don't have the answer. What we suspect is something hit the fence. It appears that something hit the fence. Whether that was a lawnmower or something else, I don't know.
I'm not up there. Anybody can answer this question. What about number 3? What about number 2? What about number 1? I did not put the, like I know resident has put the much over there. It is maintained by you guys, right? Or like, all of us are maintaining, whether it's HOA or CIA services. How did we miss this one for so many years? And why do we need to pay for this one now for somebody's negligence?
Well, your assumption, if I hear you correctly, is that it's been missed for so many years. I don't know when any of that damage happened. To give you an example. We've had cars run through fences. We've had cars run through fences in the back of someone's house. And when we go to those individuals and say, who ran through the fence? They don't know. And so, for us to sit here and say we have the answer, we don't have the answer to everything. We don't have the answers to everything. We've had cars run through fences and not find out who was driving the car that ran through the fence. What we're here to tell you is that when you look at these pictures, we have damages for various reasons. Some of the things based upon an educated facts, we believe we understand why those damages are occurring.
What about the 1 and 3? That's not a car damage, right? You guys said there's a root of a tree that is lifting the one. Is it right, engineer?
It appears we made that assumption. Yes, the engineer said that appears to be on root of a tree lifting the panels.
Is it an assumption or a fact?
Is
that an assumption or is it a fact that the tree?
That's an assumption.
I think he's saying it's a fact, right? Is it an assumption or?
In that particular case, if I remember right, it is a root from a tree.
So it's the fact.
You have to remember, the pictures that we're showing here are the absolute worst conditions in your neighborhood. You've got miles and miles that look brand new. So you have to remember, these pictures are showing the worst. If you walk out there, you'll go miles and miles before you see anything detrimental. So, and it depends on the different sections. So.
All right, John Rogers, Northwest. So this is my neighborhood's walls are new, so hence why I'm interested in this. But I'm a PD, project manager at an engineering firm. So the structural engineer recommended to replace entire neighborhood fences. That's an engineering solution or a corporate greed solution, whoever's making money off it. But it's not a managerial solution. Right? So we've been avoiding the actual next step. The next step is not deciding how to pay for full replacement. The next step is deciding the solution. You mentioned it briefly that you could not find the color brick, right? But the real solution, what we should be talking, which we're avoiding, is the next step, which is to assess solutions, not worst case solutions, which is the most expensive, but how to find multiple solutions and decide on a managerial point of cost versus full replacement benefits.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
So I think that's what. So my question is I think what you all want to know is people are all worried about this $27 million, right? Which is not the actual cost, that's the financial on top of it. What everyone would like, which they don't realize, the one person that's questioning it, is we should be talking about the next step to voting on solutions and how can we assess those and choosing it. Because as we look at this, they were saying these are the worst case spots. These worst case spots are pretty darn minor, and you're saying that they're small. So why not we use our current budget of $270,000 to replace those small spots and we're covered.
We are. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. We're looking at all the small spots that we can fix. We're not fixing those things. Mentioned earlier, we're spending over $200,000, and most of them have been spent in the last 5 years replacing small spots. And so, this project, this process of assessing all of the fencing is to understand, what those errors are. We're not inclined to spend $27 million if we don't have to spend $27 million. But what we do understand is that if you only go spot to spot over a 10-year period of time, then you're going to end up with a crooked looking wall. You're going to end up with different bricks, different colors, different design. And hold on. We'll get into that. And so we've never said this is the solution. We said this is a solution. If we, the residents of Cinco II, feels that this isn't the solution that we want to use, we have the ability to do all of those things around finding different solutions that the residents can live with. And so, as we stated earlier, this isn't a final solution. No final decisions have been made. We will work through the residents to find solutions that the residents can live with.
So I guess, to clarify, my question is what is that process, and how do we go to that next step of deciding on a solution we want to move forward?
So one of the things that we said earlier was that we want to create a committee to help us with that. You sound, I'm putting my question in the spot. You sound like a perfect person that we would love to have involved in this process. And that's what we're looking for. We've done it already through a budget committee to help us, and they come up with some great ideas, and it really helped out the community. It's a different look. You have 7 board members up here that discuss and try to do the best they can in the amount of time they have. But when you get a group of people that have different experiences and different looks at things, it brings it to the board and it helps us. It opens our eyes. No one in here has said that they're perfect, can make the right decision. We're doing the best we can with the information that we have. And it's an education, as I said earlier, for me, this is an education for me. I'm learning on the fly. And so I'm trying to read and do all those things, and I have to depend on the companies that have been hired to give me the basics. And it is up to us to go through and research. But that's what we're asking y'all for help with. And that, again, Northwest, I live in Northwest as well. We have some issues that I've started seeing up. If my eyes change after seeing these things over the past 6 months and more, I start looking at things differently. I can't walk through the neighborhood in any of these things and say, oh, sprinkler head, tree, and those things come up front, and they get tons of emails from us. They get tired of us. But that's what we volunteer to do, and that's what we're trying to do our best. So I would love it if you could not necessarily volunteer, but help give us some guidance. That's what I'm asking. So the next step is create a committee, is what we're looking at, and getting the homeowners with experience to commit to help us. Did I get that? That's the next step. None of this is approved, bid, or anything until the homeowners tell us which way they want to go. I'm trying. If I miss something, please say.
I'm Lee, right over there. I was a voting delegate for about 5 years. Grand total of 5 votes, all my own. So I have 2 parts. One, how many of y'all have been a voting delegate? You notice this folks over there. There's one. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of the people that were really worked up about it haven't been involved in the process. I do remember when you became a board member. In fact, I was one of the ones that voted for you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. If I remember correctly, you're talking about the developer. Was there, refresh my memory, didn't they hold on to the control of the HOA board for a couple of years? Longer than they should have by their bylaws? I admit,
part of the problem was we could never get one. Like I said, I was made a voting delegate on one vote, my own, because the board had to appoint me. So, and I'm remembering this from years ago, people were saying, oh, the voters, but we, the homeowners, also were not, have a little bit of blame, but yes, I'm wondering if the developer maybe delayed the process and let it get worse.
The transition, you're correct, the transition to a 7 elected board member, elected director board was delayed. It didn't occur about a year and a half after it should have. So there was a point in development that a trigger should have been pulled to go from 3 homeowner board members and 4 developer to 4 homeowner and 3 developer, and that was missed. So when that was pointed out, it was a completely fully elected board at that point.
But my point is that delayed this process.
Yeah, and in answering that, I want to make sure that you understand, everyone understand that we were not accusing the developer. That was a delayed process that was overlooked. Was it intentional? No.
I get that. I'm just saying this. There was a lot of questions on developer liability. That's the only one I can see. Because like you said, you buy it and it's supposed to have a 20-year lifetime. It's only been there about 10, 12 years, depending on which part of the fence you're on.
13 to 9 currently.
13 to 9.
I mean, that's the bit, yes. So it varies.
So I mean, it's half this design life.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe if we had been able to get, like you said, the board members have to learn themselves. I mean, you're coming into a code. I'm pretty sure you don't build fences for your professional life. So there's some learning there. I get it. I'm wondering if the process, the homeowners, and maybe they should have been looking as well when they control the board. Oh, hey, it's one part and it's having a problem because the tree's too close. Well, move the tree before, you got a huge tree that's worth a lot of money and a fence that's broken. So.
Let me say this. I can recall all the way back 2009 asking the question, should those vines be on the wall?
Exactly.
And I went online, did some research, and a lot of the material I read said that the vines shouldn't be on the wall. So we asked some people that were supposed to be experts around that, and they said, no problem. So we didn't remove the vines at that time. But what we have done is that we learned better, and we have a better understanding of what those issues are. We have corrected those with a reasonable amount of time. And so when you take a tree, we have, I forget what's the number of trees, 20,000 trees? Yeah, we have over 20,000 trees in this community. We have over $30 million worth of living access, talking about things that have big trees and all those kinds of things. And so when we take down one tree, someone goes, why you took my tree down? We understand now that just like everything else, we understood that the roots and all those kinds of things, but we didn't understand some of the damages they were doing. And so now as we learn those things, we're trying to correct those things. Thanks for the question.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Ram and I'm Northwest Cinco 2. I'm a 4-year-old resident. It seems like, I'm paying for somebody's mistake. I'm part of that $27 million, whatever it is. And is this it? Or is there any more 27 millions is coming, in the future? That is one question. The second one is, whatever the questions asked, I heard a term called process. And you guys are doing, this all HOA maintenance and HOA whatever. So is there any third-party auditing for all the decisions you guys make and all the things you write and all the the decisions you made, like $27 million? Is there anything available for the residents?
There is a financial audit every year. and that is also available on my cincoranch.com. The association has a corporate attorney that reviews any guidelines or rules and regulations that the board may pass before they're fully adopted. And I think you had another question.
No, I understand that part, financial and board auditing, what are the, but is there any third party company like PricewaterhouseCoopers, so maybe a big company, but and why third party other than you guys audit and make sure that what are the decisions you guys make, like how you came up with this $27 million number is appropriate and correct, that kind of stuff.
As far as a third party reviewing the decisions made by the board, no, other than you guys as the homeowners, that's your role as a homeowner and a member of the community. You elect your voting delegates so they can elect your board. So that's one of the things that you would do. In addition to the financial audit, the board is currently in the process of investigating the next reserve study, and that reserve study will incorporate anything like this. We've had reserve studies in the past, but it's always been while the community was still in development. So this will be a big reserve study compared to the other ones that we've done. So that is going to assist the association with planning and being prepared for expected replacements such as this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Neil Smith. I'm from Cinco Northwest. My question is, I moved in Cinco Northwest like in last 1 year, and this year you are proposing an increase of my HOA for Southwest. Throughout your presentation, you have been talking about Southwest Cinco Ranch, but you never spoke about Northwest Cinco Ranch. Only place I see is the last PowerPoint where you're putting the dollars, just increasing the HOA fee or MUD. But the MUD of Northwest is MUD 58, not 1, not 2, 3, 4. So how can you justify the cost for Cinco Northwest, increasing the HOA or MUD?
One, no one likes to increase the cost. We do our best to keep it down. But the way the covenants and bylaws are written, if it is an HOA cost, doesn't matter if Southwest or Northwest, it gets shared equally among what they call the units, the households. Each house pays an equal amount. So if it's $100,000, we have to do that. You divide it by, it's 6,338 or something, 6,338 houses roughly. It divides that equally, and it gets billed to the residents. That's what's written in that, and that's what we're going by. And that number that was, the 700, it's actually not 700, it's 600. So you take the 6,300 homes, plus homes, divide that number out, and that's how it's broken down. That's the only way we can do it. The only way to change any of those laws, bylaws, or covenants would be up to the homeowners to vote. We need 67% of the units, the households, to vote for a change.
I have one more question to add. If Cinco Northwest people voted down this proposal, but Southwest has more units, if it passes, so you are going for a vote, so we will be losing the battle, right?
I'm not sure I understood that.
If you put it for voting, this proposal, $27 million, Southwest might vote it because it's their fences that they are crumbling. But Northwest is okay, and Northwest says no. So we will be losing the battle because we have less units. How can you justify that one?
Yeah, no. You're saying we'll lose the value in the Northwest because of the cost. Well, it could be reversed. 5, 10 years from now, if we have the issue in Northwest, because I live in Northwest, they turn around and Southwest has to pay for the bill for the Northwest. So it's a balance. That's why it's done per unit. And the best we can do, like I say, we're going by what is written and required by the HOA. It's not a board decision to say we're going to bill these people more than the others. It's that there's a flat rate that a flat amount that has to be divided equally. That's what we do. But it's a balance. I understand. I think everyone here understands. No one wants to do this cost. It's just something that has come up, and we're trying to figure out the best way to do it and get the best people involved, which is the residents, to help us with that.
So what are your plans going to be 5 years?
But to go on that, you say that, and that's given us something to look at. That is the newest section. The last section of Northwest was just handed over to us this last August. And so it gives us a chance to go back and look at that area and try to take the proactive. We can work our way backwards. But again, it's an education that the board is obtaining on the fly, a lot of it is. It's okay, I don't do this, I'm just like you, I work my normal job, and I come here at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday once a month and leave after 9, on a good day.
So I'm Bhaskar from Cinco Northwest. It's related to the similar question only. Then the way we split from Cinco Ranch 1 to 2, why don't we split this Cinco Ranch 2 into multiple divisions? Because it is unfair, right? Like the similar question only I'm talking about. If you split like northwest and southwest into separate divisions, then we don't have to pay anything. And we will handle when the issue comes in our division.
Again, that was not our choice, that was something, if the homeowners, based on I call them bylaws, covenants, whatever's written out on this, if that's something they want to do and split it, make it 2 associations, that can be done, but there's going to be a huge cost when you come to that, because then you have the pools, you have all these different liabilities that have to come in, so it's not
the same way, like Cinco Ranch 1 and 2, they are sharing the pools and parks and all.
Okay, but so Cinco 1 and Cinco 2 are 2 separate entities. They're developed, there is no, so we have to come up with an agreement to share. That's something.
The same agreement we can come in and divide the Cinco Ranch 2 to be fair. When you get split Cinco Ranch 1 and 2, it is possible.
And that also would take that vote of amending the documents and the creation of a new, so it's a lot more complex than it sounds, and it is something that's challenging to accomplish successfully, but you still spend the money and the resources trying to do it.
See, otherwise what I am asking is, if you don't want to split, I want the Cinco Ranch 1 also to contribute the money here. Because they are also using our parks, schools and everything, and causing some damage to our properties.
This is, I think I can jump into your question. The Cinco residence, Cinco 1 is a separate entity from Cinco 2. Wait, hold on, let me try to get there. Let me try to get there. So we have a shared agreement around using the recreation facilities, tennis courts and the pools. We have a shared agreement with Cinco 1. The Cinco 1 residents can use our pools and tennis courts, and we can use their pools and tennis courts. The fencing isn't a shared access or a shared amenity between Cinco 1 and Cinco 2. The fencing in Cinco 2 is the sole responsibility of the residents of Cinco 2. And so when you say that they're coming in and they're using our pools and our tennis courts, we're going over and using their pools and tennis courts also. We did that because we believe that the greater whole of Cinco and allowing everyone in Cinco to benefit from all the amenities in Cinco is the right thing to do. And not only is the right thing to do, is what the residents of Cinco have asked the board to ensure that they're able to use the amenities in Cinco 1, because they have amenities like the beach club that we don't have. And so that's a shared written agreement between Cinco 1 and Cinco 2, but the fencing is the sole responsibility of Cinco 2.
There are new homes and there are old homes, like the Northwest is kind of the new division. That's why my request is to consider to be fair to the Northwest and see the option of splitting.
Yeah, and you know, we're in a unique situation geographically, because if you look at most developments, all of them are concentrated within the same boundaries. And so in this development, we do have that distance between Cinco Southwest and Cinco Northwest. That was a choice the developer made at some point around availability of land and the housing market and things of that nature. And so, you know, like John and Laura said, if residents determine that that's the path they want to take, then it's a path that we could possibly explore. But what you really begin to have to understand is the economy of scale. And that if you take just Cinco Northwest and create a separate association just in that area, the pools, the tennis courts, and all those things becomes your responsibility. And eventually, your fencing will reach its lifespan also. And so when people move to Cinco Southwest, when people move to Cinco 2, they moved to Cinco II because of the entirety of the community. And so when they drive into Cinco, they don't drive into Cinco and say, oh, I'm driving through MUD 1 or MUD 2 or MUD 3 or MUD 4. I'm driving through Southwest and Northwest. It's the appeal of Cinco in its entirety, in its totality, that attracts people to want to come in and live.
Yeah, but please explore that option also.
Yeah.
And you can still have the same sharing agreement like the Cinco 1 and Cinco 2. You can still have this.
Well, if that one, we can't make that decision to split. That has to come from the residents. That's what I said. The board, the residents have to come to us and say, we want to split, and then here's what happens, and there's a process the board would go through. And it'd be a similar process to this. We would call in both associations and have to go through the same type, or both Northwest and Southwest, and have a discussion. But it's not something that the board can make. It's up to the residents 100%. So that's the best I can tell you at the moment.
All right, thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Devi Prasad. I'm Cinco Northwest 2 resident. I'm a security. I appreciate your patience. I mean, it's been a long 2.5 hours. First question is, are you recording all these questions? I know all the residents here have valid questions. Are we going to record them and post them on the website somewhere?
We're trying to
We're trying the best we can to capture all of the questions and all of the responses, and we will post them.
Okay, thank you. Second one is, I have like 4 or 5 questions. You have to bear with me, please. So the second one is, I've heard that you couldn't find the colored brick, and I understand there's damage and there's extensive damage. There's also something called retrofit. So have you explored all these and exhausted the options? And how did you come to a decision that you cannot find the material? I don't think the contractor was using any special material, right? It's all standard, typical.
I will attempt to answer, and that, as I said, 5 years after 9 years ago, when we had damage to some fencing and we went back to try to get the brick that the rest of the fencing was, we couldn't find the brick. And so what my understanding is that every time they create a batch of brick, they use different clay, whatever they use. I don't know what they use.
Yeah, but it's only 5 years.
So like a cell phone, I know how to use it, but how you build it, I don't know. But that's sort of the issue that we're running into. And so, again, here's the tricky part, and here's what convinced me that moving along the path of, if you got that 6% damages to the fencing within the community, to go the route of replacing the fencing is along those lines, that I do not believe that the resident of Cinco want to have this patch. Now, and we've had this conversation around, okay, if that does happen, it would camouflage it. Here's the thing is that, when residents come to the board on those monthly meetings, and we say, well, we're gonna take this out and we're gonna do this to save money, and then we get the responses, when I moved here, it was there, and so you guys need to put it back in and replace it the way it was. And so, but yeah, I appreciate it. We will explore all options. And when we explore those options and we get with the residents that's on that committee, then we will come back and say, okay, here's a solution that the residents, suggest, and we will move from there.
I mean, in my professional opinion, there's good drawings and everything available. It's been only 5 years, so I think we should all explore those. And I don't think these bricks are not antiques when we find them.
But clarify real quick, you said 5 years. It's not 5. Some of this goes back 13 years, 12, 13 years.
It's still less than the useful life, right? 25.
No one's arguing that. No one's arguing this, but I'm saying from the brick standpoint, some of that stuff is 13. So there's some of the bricks or walls in the report was mentioned, with some of the brick, the oldest, the stuff is 6 years old. That stuff that was for the future that may have issues, but it was nothing of the issues. The stuff that has the issues was between 9 and 13. So I just want to clarify that, because there's a lot of numbers being thrown around and it gets lost in translation. So that the age of the bricks that we're looking to repair are 13 years. Now, Do they make the same brick from 13 years ago? No, they make, you know.
There could be similar ones, you know, they will not completely replace it.
And we have done it, and it's a patch, it's noticeable. And so the basic process, the thought process, and this is why we're here to talk about, was the aesthetics of Cinco 2. I don't worry about Cinco 1 or any other, but when you look at the aesthetics, based on the comments that we see as a board, that's what the opinion of what the homeowners want. We're seeing that there's quite a few people say, no, we don't want that. We want the patch or different options. And so that's what the conversation was all about, was to figure out the best option. And that's what was proposed. If we do it as the MUD had researched it, keep the aesthetics, this is what it would cost the HOA to do. That's what was proposed. There's only two things.
Can we just get an example of it next time we meet, just so we can see it, like some examples?
Yeah. No, we'll do see what we can do to get the patches.
Okay, thank you.
I know you have a whole bunch, but we have.
I know you got one last question. So I keep hearing voting and this residential advisory board. So when is this? What is the timeline for this voting, and how is the decision going to be taken?
Well, so it's still doing. We have to get people to sign up. So once we can get people to sign up, we'll put the process. I mean, it sounds horrible. We keep saying the process.
What's the approximate timeline?
How many people have signed up? Okay, I'm not trying to be. How many people have signed up? We have one person sign up tonight.
Let me tell you what. I like this decisiveness. We will put together a charter. We will put together a charter to form a residential advisory board by the 1st of January.
Real quick, can we do it by February because we have one meeting in December, November, December, we do a combined meeting. So we have one meeting after this. We're gonna have to send it off, come up with it, send it off, get it approved so that it's set up correctly. So I would say by February, we can have a charter set up for advisory committee.
So whatever decision comes from that voting is going to be final, or am I getting it right?
The residents will then. So the process is, if the residents decide this, it goes through the delegates. Based on everything we've found, that the delegates will make this the vote, and then it comes back to the board. And based on that, we would approve it.
Thank you all for sparing your personal time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, if any of you are interested in being this potential committee, please leave your name and contact here, because many of you have asked some excellent questions. You really have. And we're starting to ask some of those same questions ourselves. But we need your involvement. And as far as the decision of the overall, what we're going to do, I'm just going to reiterate, that decision has not been made. And that's why we're going to form this committee, in order to get all the expertise that we have to make the right decision for everybody.
Okay.
Hi, I'm a working delegate from Southwest, and I had a discussion with a member from my section, and everybody had the same question: why is it failed? Because the engineer who had spoken before, he had given pictures of the root of the tree, or maybe some inferior construction. I mean, we are still assuming things. We don't have the exact list of process. Say, CIA services who sends you notice if the fence is broken within 1 week, then the brick is broken. Why did they not notice it the right next week? And why the concerned moving company has not been notified? Is their mistake? Is there something they have to fix? I mean, we are talking about it now. We have no way to go back and trace it. When happened, who moved it, and who broke it. But if it was noticed on the in the immediate inspection, then we should have been on somebody else's expense, and now we are paying them. Because somebody broke it and went, and we don't know who broke it and when they broke it. What was CA doing during their inspections? And same thing, right? If it was an inferior construction, which section was it? Maybe we have to reach out to user and somebody saying, hey, you know what, this is very poor construction. This is failing in 1/3 of the lifetime. Life expectancy is kind of 30. It's failing in 9 years. Why? And if you have to put like other gentleman who was, I'm not an engineer, I'm like, but the other gentleman who came here, he was engineer. He pointed out saying, if you guys do a water test, maybe if we need to make a small, if we need to break a small area to do the test, maybe we have to. So if it's a really poor construction which we can do, then again, the children has to be school. I mean, I think we need more education here. Of course, yes, we have failing fences that needs to be fixed. I agree with you guys. But on the other hand, we need a strong education why it has failed. Otherwise, we might not be able to put the proper QC, I mean quality control, and we'll be here at the same place without knowing why it's failing. We strongly need to know why it's failing before we go ahead and fix it. I agree we need to fix it, but we also need to know why it's failing.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Tenchio, and I'm from Cinco Ranch Southwest. I'm a young mom with 3 young kids, but I still decided to stay here that late, even though my kids are sleeping within me. I have a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. But I still want to stay because I do want you guys to hear what the residents feel. I stayed here not only for 1 year, not 3 years, maybe even longer than 25 years. So that's why I care Cinco Ranch. I wish it to be good. I care all those fences. But we want this project to be an effective and constructive project. It's not, another, eat up of my kids' future educational expense. That's the reason why so many residents here. It's not because we don't like those fences to be fixed. It's just because we care what is the scope of this project. Whether it really worth 27 million or only a few million can be fixed. We worry about the scope of the project. So that's why everybody tries to know more details. So how many percentage is cost by the brick, how many percentage is cost by the wood, and how many percentage is cost by the metal. We all need those numbers to make us feel safe, to make us know that is what we pay for, that is worth it. We just don't want $27 million to handle by someone. They have some interest. That might be conflict with our residency's interest. So that's why we are here. We want to make sure the plan is a good plan. We need more guarantees, like, I don't know, I'm not a good engineer, I don't know much, but I just before I know how to make sure the project has a very, go into a reliable hand, I cannot say yes to any of those projects and the fees. That's what I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And we're in total agreement. You're not where we're not. We're in total agreement. We want to do the repairs in the most reasonable, sensible terms that's going to ensure that the lifespan is realized. And so we're in total agreement. Thanks for staying and thanks for participating.
Yeah, especially about the brakes,
Yes.
because as what you projected and mentioned by the professional constructors and engineers, they said it's 25 to 30 years expected lifespan. But you see now, even from the first brake that is laid, it's less than 20 years. So that's why it makes most of the residents so worried.
Yes.
How if an other failure of the project happen, what can we do?
And that's why we're putting in structures, processes to ensure that we get the life expectancy and we don't end up in the same situation again. But again, thank you for staying and thank you for your
Yeah, I would love to help out whenever I can, and I will also want to reach out to more community members. I think there always some professional be there.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to participate in the committee, appreciate it too.
Good evening, my name is Ron Stefani. I'm the voting delegate for the Cedar Heights neighborhood section Keys and Tom. And so I'm speaking on behalf of my constituents. They want me to ask a few questions. First one is that they prefer to just have this fence fixed as needed. They do not support the total replacement of it. They don't understand why it can't be fixed. I've heard a number of reasons why you can't match up the brick. Well, then we'll just have to live with that because it's too easy to raise taxes in a it's too easy to push the burden onto people that find a hardship. Our school taxes keep going up and up and up, whether we like it or not. We got an $85 million football stadium, which is another topic of bizarre spending in this county. So it's got to stop somewhere. But again, the constituents really want this fence to be replaced on an ad hoc basis as needed. And I guess where it stems from is it's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. That question has been asked many times here tonight, but it's never been addressed. People are upset with the people who let this happen. This is a big surprise, $27 million. This is a big failure. This is an F. We haven't heard anybody say, you know what, this is bad, all right? Somebody screwed up big time, or a group of people screwed up big time, and they have to be held accountable. And that's what the people are asking, hold them accountable. We're not satisfied that you sent a letter to Newland. We're not satisfied that you sent a letter to Highland Homes. We want legal action. Some of my other constituents are saying what are best practices. We might not know what those are. Cinco Ranch II, are they having a problem? I know that's a question that everybody has, but one of the neighbors asked, are we looking at what best practices are? Again, some people are in financial straits. $130 a year tax increase. The school's probably going to want more money. Fort Bend probably will want more money. And then I thought there was a Texas law. One of my constituents asked if there's a Texas law on property tax caps for MUDs. I don't know. He wanted me to ask. I don't know.
Yeah. This would be a debt service item, and so the property tax cap relates to your operating side. And so, if this were a project that was decided by the residents that you wanted the MUD to do, and we sold bonds for it, it would not be subject to that.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass that on. I've sat on other HOA boards in other states, and quite frankly, I've never seen such a major failure. I'm not blaming you folks, because most of you folks weren't around when this happened, but I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. $27 million is a hell of a lot of money. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is Jerry. I live here in Cinco Ranch Southwest. Not like many of you guys said, like this, there are some walls like 15 years old, and this was need to be torn down and rebuilt. I lived in a place, our community was built in 2011. So that is only 8 years old, and now it's marked as priority 2. That means it needs to be torn down and rebuilt. It does not make any sense. Okay, you don't need to argue. I don't even want to argue with you. My question is, you said nothing is decided yet, right? So that's why we are here. So the thing you said that is not decided, that is including the decision about to tear down everything and rebuild. Okay, so that means we can say no to that plan, right?
Correct.
Okay, so will there be a vote on that?
The delegates will take care of that, yes.
Right? Okay, so, well, if the vote does not pass all the residents, I mean, majority of the residents, that means the wall will not be torn down and rebuilt, right?
No.
That means that we will eventually we're going to have to manage ensuring that walls. As far as the MUD being involved and the project is as is, it would not be moved forward.
So I mean, like if the majority of the residents think we can accept patches, then you will do that, right?
If the majority, we will do whatever the residents advise.
Yes, yes, but the whole
Now,
night.
at the same time, we will attempt to educate the residents around the unintended consequences of those decisions.
Yeah, I already said that.
And with the understanding that long term, It's a whole bunch of short-term things we can do. But long-term, there's unintended consequences, and it's our responsibility to educate the board around those.
Yeah, that,
Educate the residents around
I've
us.
already seen that we were being educated this whole night, but don't make it as something granted. Like we have to tell them everything and we have to agree with that. We have the right to say no, right?
Correct.
Okay, so everybody remember this and remember to come back to vote. Okay.
So let me ask you this question.
And also,
let me ask you this question. And so in the room tonight, there was a couple hundred people. And so there's 6,300 homes in Cinco. In Cinco 2, there's 6,300 homes. And so tonight there's a couple hundred people. And so are you saying that the couple hundred people here speaks for 6,300 homes?
no,
Okay.
but we
And so that's why you mentioned it.
we can tell others.
Yeah, that's why you mentioned it. That's why you
But we
mentioned
can
it.
tell others, right? So I just want everybody in this room remember that this is not a fact that is decided. We can choose not to tear down the wall.
Correct.
We can choose to patch.
Correct.
Right? So we have that choice. But don't make everybody here think that we don't have that choice. And that is the impression you gave us the whole night.
Okay, let me, please. If that's the impression that you all have, someone said earlier, someone needs to be accountable. I hold myself accountable for that.
Okay,
As the board president, I'll hold myself accountable for that.
Okay, no problem. Since this problem is clear, so we all remember that we have the choice. We can choose to patch. Right? Okay, and that any decision about if we want to patch or rebuild, we, all the residents, will have to vote, and the majority need to pass.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And
We,
another question
wait,
easier.
hold on. We talked earlier about, so that's 5 persons. So we talked, we got a line of people behind me.
Website, if they want to sign up, I think a
So
lot of
you get
people
back
just
in
left
line.
without knowing.
And ask
That
the
we
rest.
can sign up.
Please, sir.
One question. This is
Okay, one question.
I want to ask this attorney. Okay, since we have to vote and the majority need to pass a decision, okay, is that just because of the courtesy of the HOA, or is it because it's required by the Texas property code?
The thing around the vote is within the HOA, it's the covenants.
The MUD has no right to do this project without the HOA.
Okay, I suggest all you guys go back and study Texas Property Code Chapter 209.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I'm Dave Long, I live in Stone South here, and I'm a little disappointed we haven't tried to talk about more numbers except for 27 million. So I'd like to try to go fishing a little bit for a few things. Do we have any guesstimate of what we could spend to repair instead of replace? Any?
I know we have repaired sections. I don't have that pricing in front of me, so I couldn't say, but we have repaired sections, and we have a number for that. I can't tell you what it is.
From the engineer's perspective, to what extent do we have to replace priority 1 stuff? Like, is it irreparable? Or is it just, it makes more sense? Like, do you understand, is this like, it can't realistically be fixed, it's cheaper to rip it down and rebuild it? Or is it just?
Sure. So you have to understand, if you have 6 bad panels here that look bad today, and you replace them, and the next 6 look okay, a year from now, you're gonna be charged by the contractor to repair 6 easily twice,
yes,
3 times. So if you start hundreds of different projects throughout
you'll spend way more.
You'll end up spending so much more. So that's why we decided as our recommendation to lump each development section. So surely you could, no drawings, no design has been done. So you could sit there and go, okay, I want to replace this street, but when you start piecing it into teeny little tiny parts, the contractor is going to charge a lot more per foot.
Basically, we're up here where this discussion has been operating with the assumption that enough of it is bad that it is probably all bad. Is that?
No, we judge each or development section.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Like,
If 50% of the wall around my area is bad, then probably the other 50% of it is also bad and just hasn't decayed yet?
Correct. Or it will be, because again, it's very subjective on our parts, what we saw on that day, and by and large, the majority of the problem is corrosion of the reinforcing steel. That stays hidden until all of a sudden the rust comes out or the mortar joints pop. And so that's why you get this kind of, all of a sudden, mortar joints start popping all over the place.
Do we have any sense of what other communities spend on yearly wall maintenance? Have we been consistently underspending? Do other people consistently spend more on wall maintenance? Do we have any landscape guy? Do you have any idea on that?
We're engineers and architects designing the projects up front, so we're not maintaining.
Okay. And do we have any sense of what, if we re-rip the brick walls down and put wood up, obviously wood will decay faster, but apparently brick can decay fast too. That would not look as nice, but is that 5 times cheaper, twice as cheaper? Quick guess?
It's more than that. So we are estimating the linear footage of this fencing run over the next 20 years. The price is at $130 a linear foot for brick fencing. Wood fencing is only $45.
So factor 3. Okay. But thank you for providing some numbers.
All right, thanks.
Johnny, I'm Cinco too. I just have a real quick question, and I need some clarification on one thing you said. If we were to go with the MUD route, and you were to get these bonds, you provided an estimate of 0.30 cents per whatever I buy your house is. If you were to get a lower bid, would that come down?
Yeah, the amount of bonds we sell, is really kind of directly proportional to the amount of tax rate that you would have to increase. So if we decided, not we, because we're not going to decide anything. If the HOA decided to do less fences and we sold less bonds, it's kind of linear. It would be just, if we did half that amount, it would be $0.015 instead of 3 cents. So there is, if we do a very few bonds that, they're more expensive, meaning there's some fixed costs that don't change. But in general, yes, if we did half as much, it would cost about half as much of the tax rate.
Is that a cap, or could it be higher?
The 3 cents was on the basis of doing the 1 and 2, priority 1 and 2.
Steve, I want to, you
Yeah.
said 0.3, it's actually 0.03.
0.03.
Yeah, 3.
Okay, but could that be higher? If you got a higher bid, is that number going to go up?
It could slightly, meaning those costs can adjust, either way, depending on what the actual bid amounts, but these are all projections that we can have a fairly significant contingency. I think a 20% contingency is 20% contingency. So we think they're very conservative.
Okay, and this is for both HOA and you guys. I think one thing that's got us nervous is this was supposed to last 20 to 25 years. We're at half here, and you said that we had a 1-year warranty. So what's going to prevent this from happening again? Are you going to get us a 25-year warranty, or are we going to get another 1-year warranty and maybe back here in 5 more years with the ball back?
You're not going to get a different warranty that's materially different. It may be that you can get a 2 instead of a 1, but it doesn't really exist in the market that we have seen for a longer warranty. What we have done from a planning standpoint is enlisted an engineer who has a lot of expertise in this area, so they are designed better, constructed
better,
Well,
and then, you know, this is a
No,
matter of.
excuse me, but that gives us a lot of confidence, because I mean, we, you know.
Well, but we didn't have that, we didn't have that in the process before.
What about insurance?
And
like
then,
this guy said?
and then the third, is, having maintenance standards, that has, you know, regular maintenance done. All of those things are designed, to prolong the life.
Can you buy insurance?
I'm not sure, I've never, seen, these walls insured, but that's certainly an excellent question.
And you said we're gonna be voting, I want a clarification, we're not voting, our delegates are.
Correct. Correct, the delegates.
We don't get a say, we get to call our delegates and complain, or say we want this or that, but we don't get a vote.
The delegates, yes, the delegates are the ones that get the vote. Based on the type of common area fence that it is, yes, that's what's been
So we
determined.
have to, you know, hope that they'll vote according to what we.
Right, and it's a communication thing, I mean, trust me, it's difficult, you know, to communicate to everyone. And, you know, we've been trying to figure that out, get the delegates involved more, and to talk to the residents a lot more.
Could we have a vote? I mean, could there be something where you mail out something to all the residents and we check what we want? Like, if you narrow it down to 3 or 4 options, we check, we mail it back to our delegate, and then they have, you know, a tally of what we want?
We can look into different ways of getting opinions on that and providing that information to the delegate.
It's a great thing for the community.
Yeah, and then again, we're loving help and ideas to get people in there. You know, just on a side note, I mean, you know, the delegates are a challenging thing because we've talked about and we've tried to involve the delegates as much as possible, and this is hopefully a great start to get them in there because I think there are a lot of opinions of the homeowners don't have much say. And I don't think if any homeowner has come to any of our HOA meetings, the board has listened, we sit and take it. We don't necessarily give a decision that day or, you know, we talk about it. So if we can get the delegates involved and get the residents to communicate to the delegates, it makes the whole thing a whole lot simpler to do. And so if you're not a delegate and you're interested in being one, write your name down on here, please, because we need them. We have the delegate meetings, and only about 10 people show up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand this. I mean, normal delegate meetings aren't talking about twice a million repair projects.
Well, we have had talks with them at the previous ones, and let them know that this project is coming. And it's the same. It's hard to get it out there when people don't respond. That's the challenge to us on that.
Okay. Let's get back to the mic.
John T. from Southwest area. We have one question, I promise, and this is a technical question to the engineers. Can we go back to that slide where it shows priority 1 and priority 2? What is that specifically?
On the map?
Yes. Right here, yes. The blue is priority 1 and red is priority 2, my understanding is correct?
Correct.
Right. Out of the priority 1, the blue area, for example, if we were not to replace the whole section, instead we want to patch, to make it a patch, quilt patch looking work, percentage-wise, how much are we talking about? Legal-wise, percentage? For section 1 and also priority 2.
For the priority 1, again, this is just an estimate based on what we looked at for 6 months ago.
I understand.
And you have to understand, it's not a cut and dry, the wall.
Are we talking about 80% or 10%?
On the priority 1s, I would estimate about 40%. 40% of the panels of the priority 1s were bad, or showing signs of deterioration.
Half. Less than half.
A little under half. Again, this is a guesstimate without me going back and reviewing my notes I did 6 months ago. And then the priority 2 will be a smaller percentage, such as probably 25%.
So 1 out of 4 panels.
Right, but again, if I know that these 6 were built by one contractor and then the next 10 were built by the same contractor, surely these next 10 are going to fail very soon as well.
I understand that.
So that's why we lump them by development sections, because generally an entire development section was built by the same contractor. And so we could tell the difference going from section to section.
So easily that $11 million on priority one and priority two will become $3-4 million.
You can't say that that's apples to apples, because you start cutting these contracts into little itty bitty pieces and getting a contractor. If you have 100 contracts to replace 6 panels here, 8 panels there, you lose your economy of scale. You are going to, it would be a nightmare trying to keep track of which panels were replaced.
I understand that concern,
You
but
know,
you also said there's miles of fences looking brand new, right?
Yes.
So that doesn't seem to be in line with the diagram. If there's miles looking brand new.
Those are the priority 3s and 4s are not on that map.
Oh, okay.
Only the priority 1s and 2s, just to give a sense of what part of the community they're in.
So about 40% on priority one and 25%.
And again, without me reviewing my notes.
Ballpark.